I'm very serious about this. My birth certificate says I was born on 3rd October 1912. So last year I celebrated my 100th birthday. Now, Honorable Gatete and Her Greatness Claire Kamanzi have spoken about the results of what we see in Rwanda. I don't want to repeat what they said, but I want to discuss the social software that has made it possible for Rwanda to realize the kind of results, whether in business resolution efficiency, the kind of results in the figures of economic growth and the attractiveness of Rwanda as a destination for investment. And what has been the most fundamental reform measure Rwanda has conducted, which we have not seen in sub-Saharan Africa over the last 50 years. In many ways, post-genocide Rwanda is an exceptional experience in terms of state reconstruction in Africa. And I think what Rwanda has achieved, which is most significant, is to liberate the state from elite capture. In many countries, by the way, including this one, I hope the British will not be angry with me, or let me refer to another one distance away, the United States. The power of special groups over the public policy making process is so powerful. Like 70% of Americans say they want some background checks on guns. But a few influential groups that have capacity to lobby Congress can easily appropriate the public policy making process to serve their interest. And therefore the common good is defeated at the altar, even in a purely democratic process. The public good or popular sentiment is defeated at the altar of special interest groups lobbying those who make decisions. Now, in Rwanda, there has been a strong effort to insulate the state to a particularly high degree from individual and group pressures so that the state can be liberated to serve the citizens of Rwanda in an equitable manner. So, as a consequence of a sustained and deliberate effort at preserving and defending the institutional integrity of the state from elite capture, Rwanda is building the most equitable society that you can find anywhere in the world. For example, Rwanda has about 98% of its citizens enjoying medical insurance. To such a degree that even the poorest peasant in a remote village in Changugu who needs it can be evacuated to India for a kidney transplant. To such a degree that the son of my friend Clever Gatete here and the daughter of the poorest peasant in Rwanda have an equitable chance to get a government scholarship to study at Harvard. Let me repeat it. The system that has been developed in Rwanda is such that the son of the Minister of Finance of Rwanda and the daughter of the poorest peasant in a village, and I'm using these gender differences deliberately, the daughter of the most ordinary, unknown, and perhaps unknowable peasant have an equitable chance to compete for a scholarship to go to Harvard. I don't use the word equal, I have used equitable. That is an extraordinary achievement. You see, if you come to Africa and look at a lot of our roads, in the United Kingdom, for every 1,000 people, you have about 550 cars. In the United States, for every 1,000 people, they have 845 cars. So surely most Americans, adult Americans, there's an average of 2 cars for every adult American. Which means that if you live in the United States, you can always drive. You really don't need a pedestrian sidewalk. But there are pedestrian sidewalks in most of their streets. In Rwanda and most of Africa, the ratio, for every 1,000 people, there are 60 or 70 cars. But our roads are built without pedestrian sidewalks, meaning that the road construction policy is elite-driven. It is the interest of elites who drive cars that take precedence, and the concerns of ordinary citizens who walk never get consideration in the policy-making process of building roads. But if you go to Rwanda, you'll be amazed at kilometers upon kilometers of streets in Kigali and other cities that have properly done pedestrian sidewalks that are better than those I have seen in London today. That concern for the interests of the most ordinary citizen is a very powerful thing. It's difficult. You see, in rich countries, because of higher levels of per capita income, elites can afford to be generous. There is sufficient income to share in the benefits of prosperity. In poor countries, the income is so small that those who have access to power can always concentrate it in their hands. So why has Rwanda been able to achieve high levels of equity of its citizens between the poor and the rich? So I want to go to my third point, which is participation. I understand from reading international media, people who cover Rwanda really hardly understand it because they use lenses of the developed countries to understand the reality internal to Rwanda. In Rwanda, there is a high level of citizen participation in decision making. I'm happy we have the Minister of Local Government here. From the lowest level of the village, people have their own local councils where they can sit, discuss their particular interests, and those interests are then promoted to the second layer of government up to the district level, and from the district level they form part of government policy. So the policy-making process in Rwanda has a large breadth of participation by the citizen. And I think the success of what Rwanda has done is based on the fact that ordinary citizens are in charge of their own destiny. It is not a few elites who sit and discuss what will happen. People can do that. And how has this participation been broadened? It is by curbing the power of elites. You see, in our poor countries, the most important medium of communication is not the mainstream traditional mass media, because ordinary people are not participants in the mass media. They don't write in newspapers, they don't appear on radio or television. Okay. Now, I have been told that I'm too verbose, I should end here. Let me conclude by making 2 points. And I will make one reference to one major institution. When we talk of civil society in Africa, we are really talking about NGOs. If you look at the structure of NGOs in Africa, they may be formed either internationally, by international interests, or by local elites, but largely the beneficiaries of the activities of NGOs are not members of the NGOs in Africa. What they receive from these NGOs are not rights, they receive charity. The NGOs begs from abroad in order to finance its activities in Rwanda. Those who benefit from its activities cannot hold the leadership of the NGO to account because they don't elect the executive. They cannot vote them out of office. So there is no democratic way to hold them to account. But the international community insists that a foreign-funded NGO is the legitimate representative of the views of the people of Rwanda. And I find that in many ways actually offensive. Because if an NGO is funded from the UK, then its accountability is financial accountability to those who give it money. But you don't see accountability to those whom it serves precisely because they do not have an institutional mechanism to hold it to account through either elections or subscriptions. So the NGO is inherently undemocratic and anti-democratic. But when the interests of these NGOs collide with the interests of the people of Rwanda, the international media makes the mistake of claiming that these NGOs are the legitimate representatives of the people of Rwanda. In the United Kingdom, most of your NGOs, whether they are labor unions, cooperative unions, whatever associations they are membership-based organizations. The members elect the leaders and they can elect them out. The members hold organizations to account through the democratic process that is constructed. But an NGO in a poor country is a bureaucratic institution that lacks an organic link to the society it serves and therefore cannot be democratic. Anyhow, without wasting a lot of your time, let me conclude by saying that what makes me very proud as an African about Rwanda, I'm an honorary Rwandan, but a citizen of Africa, is that Rwanda has been able to assert its national independence and place the interests of its citizens above any single thing else, whether it is the concerns of the IMF, DFID of the British government, USAID, or anybody else. It is the citizens of Rwanda that has been brought to the center of decision making. Thank you very much.